to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis. With me, as always, is Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Hollis.
This is a very special episode of Pop Culture Graveyard because we are paying tribute to the late, great Norman Lear. He passed recently. He is, well, I was going to say he's the father of modern television, but that might actually be Chuck Barris. All of the reality
$1.98 beauty show guy?
Yeah. In the Gong Show with all of the talent shows and reality television. But Norman Lear is the father of modern television in many, many ways, at least good television. And this is a tribute to him. Originally, Dave and I were going to each have about 5 to 10 of our favorite moments and talk about those. But I don't know for you, Dave, but for me, it became a lot more nebulous. And I just want this to be you and I just riffing on some of our favorite moments and what we love about each show, what we love about Norman Lear's whole aesthetic, and kind of let this just be a love fest and whatever it turns out to be.
Yeah. The second I started to go for specific moments, I started realizing that's not really the moment. It's Florida. I just love Florida so much. And the way she says, James.
Yeah. So many things like that. It just basic things popped out at me. And, when we were talking about what this episode should be, and I was like, you know what? Get away from episodes. We'll just talk about moments, because I remember from the MASH episode, there are so many fantastic moments in otherwise uneven episodes. But then I'm rewatching some of these favorite moments, and all of the episodes they're fantastic episodes. So they're all very strong, and it was a pleasure rewatching them. They did not age badly at all.
Are you talking about specific ones or just all of them? Sanford and Son, the Jeffersons, All in the Family.
All of them. Good Times, Maude.
Good Times,
Yeah. It was amazing.
Did you branch out? Did you like Mary Hartman? Did you?
I purposely did not. We'll just say that Mary Hartman is a brilliant satire that did not get enough attention at the time, or especially now. I think it's one that's a deep cut that probably we will get lost in the weeds if we include it. But if you wanted to talk about it, I'm game.
No, I literally brought it up because that's the most I can say about it. Is I remember the name. My mom and dad liked it.
I'll say this for it. It was very meta, and it was very much almost a satire within a satire. It was satirizing soap operas. It was satirizing the modern American family at the time of the 70s.
It's a bizarre thing to try. It's Gary Shandling show-ish.
Yeah, it's very surreal.
It's crazy. It's the weirdest thing. So let's not talk about it.
Okay, I think we just did, actually.
Yeah,
and I think we paid tribute in our way. Yeah. Anyway, overall, was there one show that rose to the fore? Was there one show where you were like, wow, most of these moments I'm bringing up are from this one show? Or was there one that surprised you? What was the overall impact?
I think what I realized is, as I was poking around looking for reminders and trying to find ones I remembered, I kept going back to watching Sanford and Son just for the sake of watching it, because it was so enjoyable. I just really was enjoying Sanford and Son. I found it the most entertaining out of all of those. Maude, I was watching like an anthropologist. Wow, look at this show. Look at this weird show. And Good Times always breaks my heart. There's so much heartbreak in Good Times. In that show called Good Times.
Yeah. Ironically.
It's full of heartbreak.
Yeah.
And All in the Family, tension filled.
So you found
Sanford and Son was the most fun.
Yeah, you found Sanford and Son the most relaxing watch of all of them.
Yeah, it was actually a watch. The other ones was sort of investigating, whereas Sanford and Son was a fun watch.
I'll tell you something that's very interesting, because I found that when I was searching through all my favorite moments and everything, Sanford and Son didn't wind up on any of the lists. I kept saying, why is this? I love every time Fred and Aunt Esther get into it. I love every time Fred horns in on Lamont's dates. I love every time Grady shows up. I love Rollo and Lamont, like Chano from our beloved Barney Miller.
Yeah.
He comes in.
Yeah, Mr. He has a goat.
What is it I'm trying to say? I don't think Sanford and Son did big moments. I
It
think
certainly did less.
yeah, you just wind up Fred Sanford and let him go. Like he's just slice of life funny and endearing. Him and Lamont constantly crashing into each other based on Steptoe and Son, the British series. It's just
And
more
it
of a
makes
regular
sense
sitcom.
because Norman went and saw Red Fox a few times
Yeah.
and said this could be a show because that's
Also,
what Red Fox was doing. He was tearing people apart on stage. He
right,
was like kind of Don Rickles-ish, and
right. Also, it's a
so
straight up comedy. A few touching or tender moments, but they're never the big emotional moments you get in any of the other series.
I'll give you a
Um,
couple of great moments in Sanford and Son quickly.
Good.
One is Lamont comes home with a Revolutionary War rifle, or what he hopes will be that.
Right.
And
Which was a
he,
trope on the show.
that's it.
Lamont bringing something.
Lamont thinks this time he's got the treasure.
Hmm.
And he brings home this Revolutionary War rifle, and Sanford says, "Let me see that thing." He's looking it over, and Lamont's like, "You don't know how to identify a good gun." And he's like, "What do you mean I don't know anything about rifles? My great great uncle Buford was in the Revolutionary War." And he's like, "Get out of here!" And he tells him that he's like, "You're familiar with the painting with the three guys, one on the drums, one on the fife?" He's like, "Yeah, one of those guys is my great great uncle Buford Sanford." And he says, "I seen that painting, Pop, and all those dudes are white." He goes, "Yeah, well, you seen paintings of Jesus too, and he's white."
Ah.
And I was like, "That's great!" Like that's
Hmm.
probably the first time I heard mention of Jesus is not white, and it was in a joke. He even doubles down on the joke. He says something like, "Nobody spends that much time in the desert without a hat and is that white." So, not an emotional moment, but Norman Lear is like, white people have been ripping on black people for the past several hundred years. Here's a
Hmm.
microphone, get some revenge.
Yeah.
Stanford gets revenge, and
Right.
he just goes off on white people, and that's a good time.
Yeah. My favorite Fred Sanford thing, because it works on a few levels, I think, is whenever Lamont is embarrassed of Fred and Fred somehow rises to the occasion and winds up overcoming not only Lamont's expectations, but whatever the problem is in general. There's one episode I remember where Lamont and Rollo have a couple of dates. They really think they're going to make out and they're trying to get Pop to go somewhere. So they get him like tickets to a cruise or something. And, uh,
Uh,
and no matter what they're trying with the girls, it doesn't work. But then Fred somehow charms them. They find him really endearing, and like he makes them onion soup and they love it. And they're like, and at the end of it, I think Lamont and Rollo end up going on the cruise because they're like, screw this. And Fred is there with the ladies.
just having some onion soup and chicken necks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's another one where like Lamont and Fred are double dating. They have a couple of girls from Detroit who are real quote unquote live wires and they're
Uh-huh.
going to get lucky or something. But like that show to me is just more of a traditional sitcom in several ways than
Mhm.
any other thing on our list. So I think that's why I don't really think about moments. It's like it's just a great show I could watch forever. But
Everything else on our list has that episode where they dared to talk about. Sanford and
yes,
Son does not have that.
no. Well, with that in mind, let's get to
Mhm.
some of the more iconic
Yeah.
moments in the Lear catalog of shows. For those of you who don't know, Norman Lear, with his partner Bud Yorkin, had Tandem Productions, which was this production company that did a number of successful shows. He spun off, was it three shows out of All in the
Out
Family
of All in the
alone?
Family, I
You
think
get the
so, yeah.
Jeffersons, you get Good Times, and you get Maude, all
Mhm.
out of All in the Family. And All in the Family was based on a British series, Man About the House. So, it doesn't matter where you start with, it just matters where you finish. And Norman Lear really turned all of those shows into really original machines for putting the American family and the political culture and interpersonal communication on television in a way it hadn't been portrayed before. And that's why we're paying him tribute today. So do you
Yeah.
want to kick it off with one moment that really touched you?
Yeah, sure. I was going to riff off a couple of the obvious Good Times episodes that were
Yeah.
iconic, but I don't want to hit one that you're about to do.
Mm.
But there was this is a simple little moment where Thelma,
Who I had
so
a
good.
massive, massive crush on
I
my entire
mean, I
childhood.
went back and checked. She's as gorgeous as I remember. Oh my God.
Bernadette Stannis, I believe is her
Uh-huh.
name.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's her and her brother JJ, Kid Dynamite,
Hmm.
and their little brother,
Michael.
Michael, and then James in Florida,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. So Thelma brings home a man who is proposing to her.
Larry.
Um, Not Larry. This was an
Okay.
older man,
Distinguished older gentleman.
distinguished older gentleman, and he totally was distinguished older gentleman, and he was nice and stuff, but he was too old. James and Florida are shutting them down,
Are you
and
bringing up the very same episode I was going to talk about? Is this the
no,
okay?
this is JJ stands up to John
Yeah.
Amos.
No,
Yeah,
Dad, you're wrong.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
exactly one I was going to talk about.
It was crazy for
But
me
that's
as a person.
Larry.
Oh, it is Larry.
Yeah.
Are you?
That's why when you were
I
like, I was
thought
like,
Larry
okay, it's a different one.
was the football player.
No, Larry only
Okay.
makes two appearances, the
Oh,
engagement and the
okay.
breakup.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
no,
I
that's
thought.
great. Great. We're in agreement. Continue.
Yeah, because it's an incredible scene because John Amos is a formidable guy.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the scariest dads on television.
Yeah.
He ruled with an iron fist. You did not talk back to him. I met him. He was a formidable guy.
Uh,
I went and saw a comedy show, and he was the host. He introduced each act. He said, "Some of you probably know me from," and I went, "Beastmaster." And he, he shot me a look, and then he said something along the lines of, "Don't listen to that guy. He's got a thing for men in loincloths," or something like that. He made a
mm.
good joke. And then I went up to him afterwards and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to say hello and tell you I'm a fan and apologize for yelling Beastmaster." He said, we were in Boston. He said, "I
Uh,
knew it would be a New Yorker."
wow,
Yeah. Yeah,
he's
he was
really a
quick.
good ad libber. He's really
He was quick on his feet. He did not disappoint. Anyway,
that's
and
great.
he was a formidable dude.
Yeah.
And my father was a formidable dude. And my father was strict. And my father could get angry. And
Hmm.
to see skinny little JJ basically says, "Pop, I never ever do this, but you are wrong."
Hmm. I love that. I had that for those of you playing along at home. It's called Love in the Ghetto. It's season 3, episode 4. And it's so cool because, like Dave says, John Amos is a big actor. James is an imposing figure as head of the household. And rewatching this, you see just what a great actor John Amos is because he goes through many shades of reactions to JJ's opposition. And JJ is like, "No, Dad, you're wrong." And he's like, "What'd you say?" Like at first he can't even believe his ears. And then he's like, "No, Dad, you're wrong." And then he laughs. And I laughed because John Amos is so endearing, and he's got all that baggage with him. He was Gordy on Mary Tyler Moore show. He's just such a lovable character, and James Evans, his character, is a lovable character, and he laughs, and I laughed, and then he got serious again, and it got scarier, and he goes
Hmm.
towards JJ, and Florida has to intervene, and it's one of those episodes. I was rewatching these. My dad passed away a few weeks ago, and I was
Sorry.
surprised. I know, I was surprised at just how many of these episodes featured dad stuff, dad and
Yeah, there's a
son
lot
stuff.
of dad stuff.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
dad stuff in all these. And so I was like, I was a bucket of tears watching a lot of these, but it's such a great moment. And if you've never watched Good Times, JJ and Thelma going at each other's throats
They
all
are
the time,
only mean to each other.
only mean to each
That's
other. And this,
yeah.
the only member of the family who stands up for her. And she's touched. And she's like, thank you, JJ, before she
Yeah,
runs off to her
before she
room.
slams her door, yeah.
Yeah, and he continues fighting for her behind closed doors. So yeah, no, that's a great one. Along the lines of Fred Sanford saying that Jesus was black, which you brought up, there's an episode of Good Times where Michael stirs up the family by hanging a portrait that JJ painted of Jesus as a black man. It was really Ned the Wino as his inspiration, but once they hang that picture, everyone has a run of good luck. Florida hates it because she grew up with the white Jesus, and so that was who she loves. But Michael reads in the Bible that like Jesus's hair was like wool and he had eyes of fire. And so she's like, well, it does say that, doesn't it? So they hang it and like all these good things happen. But like the black Jesus thing was a refrain in some of these shows. Like, where else are you going to hear that but in these sitcoms if you're a white audience?
It was a great thing to hear Fred say, or Pop in this case, to Lamont. And, you know, he was saying it in reference to I can't remember, I think the name of that painting is The Spirit of 76, the 3-man sort of fife and drum corps. He implies that one of those guys was black, but painted white. And that's also entirely possible.
It's an early example of whitening, which wasn't even a term back then, you know, or whiteface, which now is a big thing and people are up in arms about. But like back then, forget about it. So yeah, good to see. Maybe we should go way quicker. We'll just fly through these if it's possible. I know it's probably not possible.
Let's try.
We'll try.
I don't know how many episodes exist of Good Times, but you and I just sat down.
And the first one.
And the one I brought up was the one you were going to do.
It's so true. Well, I'm gonna turn left then. In rewatching all these series, there was one series that I could not believe just how much fun it was to revisit, how much more modern it seemed than every other, and that's Maude. And there was one episode, it's our favorite kind of episode. We've talked about it, the standalone episode, and it's called The Analyst. It's from season 4, episode 9, and it's one long monologue, like Alan Alda in the Hawkeye episode where he has the concussion. She is just, like it says, in an analyst's office, and she does all the talking except for one or two little lines or a laugh from the therapist. And I was going to say it's like a 1-act play, but strike that. It's like a 3-act play because it, you know, TV is in 3 acts. And a quick disclaimer, your mileage may vary because therapy literally saved my life. So I think everyone would benefit from therapy. And
so, pro therapy here too.
Pro therapy. As someone who's gone through a lot of therapy, Maude, her character, she gets real places in that episode. Her character, you believe in her talking, which is, you see her doing the work, as they say, which is the only thing you can do if you want to get anything out of therapy. And she leads herself good places. And she has an arc in that episode. And she's smart enough at the end of the episode to know that she needs to come back next week. So it's a fantastic episode. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And that's Norman Lear saying, B. Arthur is capable of so much.
She can carry.
Let's give her an episode. Let's give her something meaty.
I think she won an Emmy, or she was nominated for that one.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, tremendous. Maybe my favorite. No, it's not my favorite. I'll get to my favorite. All in the Family.
Yeah.
Carol O'Connor. Yeah. Which is like, there's so many great moments. But the episode is called Two's a Crowd, season 8, episode 19.
Mine won't be like that.
No. Archie and Mike are locked in the storage room at the bar. Kelsey's bar, which is now Archie's place. They're stuck in there together. Anytime Mike and Archie are stuck together, I'm going to piggyback this. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to piggyback this with a second moment. But they're stuck in the stock room because Meathead locked them in there accidentally. And the two of them have nothing to do but drink liquor, get drunk, and talk. And we wind up hearing a little bit about Archie Bunker's father. And it explains so much about his character. And Mike says at one point, because, you know, Archie's dad said some racist things. And Mike was like, my dad used to say that stuff too. He was wrong and your dad was wrong. And he's like, no, my dad wasn't wrong. And he's like, yes, Archie, he was. But he's like, no, my dad And he goes on to say that his dad, he had big hands, and he busted one of his hands on Archie when he was a little kid. And he shoved Archie in the closet for 7 hours to teach him, quote unquote, to do good. And he's like, he did that because he loved me, Archie said. And if it's wrong, if what his dad did was wrong, then he didn't love Archie. And so it's this great insight into him. And Rob Reiner was an underrated actor on that show because he registers things on his face in a way that grounds whatever you're supposed to be feeling.
You don't kind of remember Meathead the way you should. He's not a foil. He's not a goofy liberal dickhead. He's amazing.
He's amazing. And I'll just piggyback this on another favorite moment is when, again, Archie and Mike are thrown together. They have to sleep in the same room. Mike is on a cot, Archie's on the bed, and Archie is finding fault with everything Mike does, from the way he takes his socks off to the way he gets into the bed. Mike kind of shimmies into the covers that are already there. Archie opens a flap and gets in and closes the flap. And then, Mike's cot breaks. He has to get into the bed with Archie. And there's a moment, Archie tries going to sleep. Mike goes to get a drink of water. He spills it in the bed. He tries to dry it. Archie feels it. He turns around, like slow playing it, and he feels the water and he goes, "You got in bed with me to do this here?" It cuts two ways, because it's like he's annoyed at the spilled water, but he also thinks it's urine. Like it's masterful.
It is. And Mike and Gloria and Edith and other people, they all chip away at what Archie is, to the point where Archie's character is written to have changed.
Yes.
Archie's character is rescued, is saved from his bigotry. He is saved from his racism. He is converted.
I mean, I don't know how converted he is.
But I'm just saying, it's not a straight line. He does make progress. And as much as he hated Mike, there was an episode, I believe, of either Bunker's Place or the actual show. But there was an episode where Mike and Gloria had moved away, and the doorbell rings, and it's Mike in a Groucho.
Oh, yeah.
Glasses and nose. And he says, like, say the magic word, get an uninvited house guest. And Archie goes, Meathead? And he takes off the glasses and he goes, that's the magic word. And Archie throws his arms around him. Like, yay, my son-in-law is visiting.
Yeah.
And it's like such a journey to get to where Archie would throw his arms around Mike Stivic.
Yeah, no, that's nice. I love anytime there's like an underlying feeling between characters that's never spoken of that is then revealed, like in that moment. That's really nice. There's that trail of breadcrumbs that we talk about that leads you to believe that there's more feeling there than is shown.
That's not an easy thing to do. There's going to be hundreds of episodes and you have to creep up on it and you can't go forward and then come back. It's very impressive that Norman Lear does it as well as he does. What do you got for Wheezy and George?
The pilot episode is one of the best pilot episodes I've ever seen. A Friend in Need, season 1, episode 1. It's a perfect pilot. They don't start with like the Jeffersons are moving to this deluxe apartment in the sky. The Jeffersons are already living there and they know their neighbor and whatever. They've been there a while. George wants to hire a maid and Louise, aka Wheezy, is self-conscious about it. She brings in a friend who's a maid. Oh, Dave's holding up a piece of paper. Louise makes friends with a maid. Yeah, it's great. At the beginning of the episode, Louise walks into her apartment with a friend who we later find out is a maid. And that maid is under the impression that Louise is the maid at her own house, that Louise works for the Jeffersons instead of is Mrs. Jefferson.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful moment. And then later it's played for laughs a couple of different ways when people find out who each other really are.
George shows up at one point while Wheezy and this woman are having coffee. Wheezy introduces George. This is my husband, George. And she says, I didn't know the Jeffersons had a couple. And
Couple of
George
what?
exactly. George goes, "A couple of what?" She says, "No, a couple, a maid and a butler."
Mm-hmm.
And they basically say, "No, honey, we are the Jeffersons."
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't believe him. She laughs. She thinks they're
Mm-hmm.
joking. And then she says, "You're too small to be a basketball player." She's like, "If you have that much money
Mm-hmm.
and you're black, you're either
Yeah.
a basketball player or a musician."
Well, with that in mind, later in the episode, we meet
Mhm.
Florence, who, by the way, she is a star.
Marla Gibbs.
Marla Gibbs. Marla Gibbs has star quality. She just immediately takes control. At the end of the episode, she has a line which is like, she looks at Roxy Roker, who is like Mrs. Willis, who has a maid. She's like, "You have a maid?" And the Jeffersons, "You have a maid?" And she's like, "How come we overcame and nobody told me?" And the
Mhm.
audience, there's
Yeah.
an ovation from the audience, which is just such a great time machine to key you into, of course, referencing the song "We Shall Overcome"
Yeah.
someday. And someday is now. And it was such a
Yeah.
wonderful full circle moment and a celebration of the sitcom, really, and how you can see yourself on television, in addition to that Marla Gibbs's character is seeing those two families having maids in this deluxe apartment. It's great.
Norman Lear is like, "I make believable shows, and it is officially believable that the Jeffersons have a maid.
Yeah.
Yay."
Yay.
Like, congratulations. And
Right.
another great thing about that episode is that the reason Florence is on the scene is because Louise hires Florence because she needs a maid. Her friend is hurt. She says, "You were looking for a maid and you didn't
Mm-hmm.
hire me?" And Louise is like, "I wouldn't feel right hiring my friend as a maid." That speaks volumes. That says you look down on your maid. You'll put a
Yeah.
stranger in that position, but not your friend. Like, that's a
Right.
lot for Louise to think about.
And also,
Um,
doesn't the maid say something like, "I sure am glad that
I'm glad I
Mrs. Willis
wasn't
didn't
friends
see
with
me as a
Mrs.
friend"?
Willis. Yeah, good thing we hardly know each other. Yeah, good stuff.
So while we're on the Jeffersons, let's just pop a few more Jeffersons things in here. There's one episode of the Jeffersons where Billy D. Williams guest stars, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
perfectly set up because earlier there's a side story about hiring celebrity impersonators. Florence overhears that, and so Florence thinks Billy D is a fake when he shows up, and she
Mhm.
treats him that way.
Yeah, which is a great setup.
Perfect. And then at the end, she finds out about it, and
Florence is the perfect person to do it too.
she's amazing. So I
Yeah.
love that episode.
And Billy D melts every woman on that episode. When it finally comes out that
Oh,
he's actually Billy D,
oh,
everyone melts, you
amazing. I
know?
love him. He's great.
Much more effective than bringing John Wayne onto Maude,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I hated.
that felt like what it was
Yeah.
just stunt casting. Although I did like seeing Conrad Bain wearing chaps.
Yeah, that's true.
And walking
Yeah.
around like he just got off a horse. Oh, and there's this really sweet episode of the Jeffersons. It's called 984 West 124th Street, apartment 5C. And
Specific.
it is a spot in Harlem where George grew up.
Mm.
And it's a Christmas episode. I am a sucker for Christmas episodes of classic TV shows. Every Christmas, almost like we talked about Charles Winchester on MASH, every Christmas he has this tradition where he brings presents to this family. He leaves them outside the door and he sends $100 every month. Louise learns about another side to George, this really sweet, altruistic side to him. He's
If you
not the most generous person
And if you catch
outwardly.
him in anything sweet, he'll deny it.
Yeah.
Big on bravado and tough guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is really sweet that she learns about this from her husband. And Sherman Hemsley is
We could
amazing.
do, you know what? We will do a Sherman Hemsley episode because,
Yeah.
folks, look up some stuff, find out about Sherman Hemsley. This guy is a maniac.
Oh, I
He
love
is
him.
he is hitting on all cylinders. He is a fan
So good.
of he's a fan of art rock, and he's a bizarre individual who is just super cool and
He's so great.
absolutely.
You know what's funny? I want to key everyone in. Dave and I thought this would be like a 15-minute episode.
No.
We're like, you know what? Norman Lear had like a 40-year TV career. 15 minutes ought to handle all the highlights.
We'll do a short.
Yeah, it'll be like a little
Mm,
webisode. So screw it. This will just be a
yeah.
regular episode if it wants to be. I want to go to a serious one just because then I want to get back to comedy. But the All in the Family episode, Too Good Edith, which is season 9, episode 27. This is the last episode before the show changed its name from All in the Family to Archie Bunker's Place. Edith has been cooking for Archie's St. Patrick's Day celebration down at the bar. And she's been cooking and getting sicker. And she has phlebitis. And her doctor tells her, you have to stay off your feet. You can't do it. She tries to hint to Archie that she's not feeling well. And he's like, come on there, Edith, you got to do. And so he's forcing her to cook. And later, she's in bed and Archie doesn't know what's wrong. And the doctor yells at him. He scolds Archie. What's wrong with you? I told her that she could die if she kept cooking. He goes up there and he's like shell shocked. And he's like, and he says this great line, you don't think too much of me. And it's all about how I ain't nothing without you. And don't you know none of this works without you and all this sweet stuff. And I'm getting emotional. He
I
tells
know.
her, like, I told them down at the bar to get along without me. I'm going to take time off work and I'm going to take care of you. It's the sweetest moment. And it winds up being the Edith send off because she's
Yeah.
off the show then. It's tremendous. I
Gene
love that.
Stapleton was out.
Yep. By the way, you want to talk great actress? Watch any interview with Gene Stapleton
I know.
and listen to how she talks normally.
I know.
She's so far removed from Edith. It's
She
frightening.
is a beautifully voiced, well-spoken genius.
Yes.
Insightful. Not that Edith wasn't insightful, but oh my God, the difference between the two of them. And yeah, everyone watch an interview with Gene Stapleton. She's incredible.
Oh. And you know what? Tremendous actress. I didn't even realize it until right now, but I'm wearing my Columbo shirt, the great Santini. Gene Stapleton was the first choice to play Mrs. Columbo, but the network was like, no, come on, that's crazy. We got to get this young, hot actress. So they went with Kate Mulgrew. But think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
that would have been great.
Too real. That's too real.
Very too real. Do you have another one to throw at us?
Well, while we're on the subject of losing Edith, I was just going to point out that there's a scene where Archie has lost Edith unexpectedly, didn't get to say goodbye. They lost her to a stroke in the show.
Right.
And he essentially says goodbye to her slipper. He's in the bedroom and he picks up one of her slippers and he holds it and he talks to her and he tells her that he was supposed to go first and that he didn't plan on having to deal with this.
And raising a little kid.
And now they've got the little girl that they've adopted.
Stephanie, played by Danielle Brisbois, another one who I later had a big crush on.
You know, Archie explains to the slipper that the two women were supposed to go on without him after he died. And now it was him. But he cries. He cries. He cries into that slipper. And I'll tell you something else. On Good Times, John Amos cries because John Amos's long lost father comes out of nowhere. James Evans is pissed. He lets his father have it, and then he cries. And then, and then his father says, I'll show myself out. And then James says, why don't you stay for birthday cake? Beautiful episode. But James cries. Archie cries. These people cry. That's Norman Lear. Got to cry at least once. You'll notice Fred Sanford never cries.
I've seen
Maude,
Fred cry.
Yeah, I
don't remember when, but I've seen
Might have dropped a bottle of Ripple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Times is a spinoff from Maude, which was a spinoff from All in the Family. There's a great episode, season 1, episode 3, Maude meets Florida. And what's fantastic is, you know, Archie Bunker was the Norman Lear creation of his worst nightmare, the exact opposite of him politically. Maude was the personification of all of Norman Lear's actual beliefs. Staunch Democrat, but played for laughs. A staunch Democrat, the anti-bunker, a staunch feminist, but also has blinders on in their way. And you never see that more than in the episode where she meets Florida. It's great because she's like, it's this white, liberal, over the top kind of almost sycophantry, where she's almost paying homage to all the suffering Florida endures on a daily basis. And it's great to have, this show is like a cavalcade of all my crushes growing up, but Adrienne Barbeau, it's great to have Maude's daughter Carol, to have Maude's daughter Carol in the room to kind of be witness to Maude tripping over herself to make Florida welcome.
Carol is the, hey, mom, take it down a notch person in the room.
Yeah. And Florida, it's great because Florida and Carol both make fun of Maude. And Maude is quick to like slap down Carol for doing it. And when Florida does it, she kind of shares a laugh with her and like acts like they're best friends. It really showcases that politically Maude is as easy to make fun of as Archie Bunker was.
It's a different laugh, though, because it's, I mean, I'm bringing up a major thing here, but someone who is over the top conservative is over the top with uncaring positions. And someone who is over the top liberal is over the top with overly caring positions.
Right.
Now, look at those two things. You can make jokes about both of them, and they can both damage society. But one is overcaring.
Yeah, I'll take overcaring.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah, no, it's
That's
valid.
my point.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder too whether could someone ask Norman Lear, like, do you see Maude somewhere and say, I have her come on All in the Family a couple of times, get people used to her, and then I'll give her a show? Or do you hire this actress to come on All in the Family and say, this lady should have her own show?
I think it's more the latter. From the little I heard, I don't think they were planning. You know, sometimes you can tell when it's what they call a backdoor pilot, where they kind of, it's obvious from the way the episode is built. But
she's Archie's aunt, by the way, right?
No, she's Edith's favorite cousin. One of the things, if we're trying to get into the mind of audiences watching All in the Family at the time, Archie's overpowering everybody. He's a steamroller. How amazing it must have been the first time Maude walks in Archie's living room. Finally, you have someone formidable to go up against him. It was the same thing with, Mr. Jefferson.
I was going to say, that's how you get a show. You got to go in and you got to stand up to Archie.
Yeah, and the audience reaction dictates, oh my God, we got to get this person a show. But yeah, B. Arthur is just fantastic. And I also love, let's just talk about the casting of the women on Norman Lear shows. These are all women who are attractive in their own ways, but I think it would be safe to say they're not beauty queens. These are women who look like real women. You have to applaud the casting of these women because I'm sure the networks fought it. Because everyone from the Donna Reed show right up through the Mary Tyler Moore show, like, it's understood that they wanted women to look a certain way. These Norman Lear shows, people looked like the viewership. And that is a rare thing. And I think it's a reason that we connected and these shows resonate so strongly.
Yeah. And when you say look feels like you're a little bit like you're talking about the face. These people were shaped like real people too. These women were shaped like real people. And I loved how much John Amos is all over Florida.
Oh, it's such great chemistry.
Yeah, they love each other. And John Amos is hot for Florida. And that is so nice to see.
Yeah.
It's so nice to watch.
And we know Maude has an active sex life because there's an abortion episode.
That's right. There is. They go there.
They go there.
I don't know what year that was, but congratulations.
As long as we're talking sexy talk, I have to bring up one of my favorite episodes of All in the Family, The Bunkers and the Swingers. Season 3, episode 7, Edith answers a personal ad in a magazine called Now Family. It's a couple that answers the ad, played by Rue McClanahan and Vincent Gardenia. They are swingers who want to swap partners with the Bunkers and have wild sex. And Louise Jefferson, her neighbor, has to tell Edith midway through their night with this couple of what they're really there for. And when Edith finds out, she goes crazy and she's like, oh my God. She goes back in the room where they've been dancing. And earlier, Vincent Gardenia's character said, like, oh, we're great dancers. We love dancing. We won an award for dancing. And so when they're back in the room, Vincent Gardenia tries to get her to dance with him again. She won't do it. And then Archie yells out something like, "Come on, Edith, the guy's an expert. You might learn something." Which is, again, a double entendre. It cuts two
Yeah.
ways. And it's so
Uh-huh.
brilliant. But Archie calls them them dirty people. But even amid all of the comedy, there's a moment where it's like sweet. And you see that these people's marriage wasn't working. They didn't have any joy in life. And then they started swinging and it reawakened their spark and their love for each other. But like even those people are treated like real people. And I
Mm.
love that about this show, even amid the comedy of it.
Norman Lear don't judge. He's not judgy.
No.
That's why Maude is funny, because Norman Lear is judgy on Maude, and in a way is judgy on himself. He's like, God, sometimes my liberalism makes me sick. Um,
Yeah.
and then he would get that out in Maude. He's not judgy, but he judges the right things. But all walks, like we've talked about in Barney Miller, where the criminals weren't bad people, they were just regular people who had committed crimes. Even these visiting people, there's a lesbian gay coalition knocks on the door, and they're not portrayed as like anything funny or distasteful. Archie, of course, slams the door on them, but Norman Lear treating people like people. We appreciate that. We're a couple of humanists,
Yeah.
human-centric
Yes.
individuals. We like
Yes.
human beings.
We do. There's one thing I want to make sure that we make clear about Norman Lear is that, there were a lot of producers like Norman Lear out there at the time who had successful track records in TV and they could write their own ticket. Everyone but Norman chose not to help tell other people's stories, not to rock the boat or shake up television and shake up the TV landscape by talking about religion, politics, etc. And these folks instead did quite the opposite and kept gatekeeping and putting out the same white bread sitcoms over and over again. From a humanistic angle, what's great about Norman, and this is something I strongly believe in, it's incumbent upon all of us to point out and confront racism, misogyny, homophobia, etc. It should not be the sole burden of people of color to confront racism or the sole burden of gay people to confront homophobia.
If
And all
if
these
their
things
burden
are,
at all,
yeah,
it should be ours. Yeah.
maybe not a burden, but an obligation. And so he should get high praise for that. And you're right about cutting across all walks of life. We just did Wonder Boys last week. There's a cross-dresser in that movie. There was a cross-dresser on All in the Family who was Edith's friend, Beverly. And at one point, Beverly is murdered. I think she's with Mike and they get mugged or something. And Edith is mad at God
Mm.
because Edith says Beverly was murdered for who he was. And she's mad at God because we're supposed to be all God's children. It doesn't make any sense if he's not there.
Mm.
And Mike is the one, I think, who has to talk to her. And Mike is like, we need you, Mom. We need you to, if you have a subject like arithmetic that's hard for you in school, you drop the subject, you don't quit school. Like we're not supposed to understand everything at once. We're only supposed to understand a little bit at a time,
Yeah.
but this is Edith angry at God for taking away her friend, Beverly, the crossdresser. This show was real. It was real talk.
Edith is a dangerous weapon, and he used her. Norman Lear used her so well,
Yeah.
because talk about getting you to let your guard down.
Oh,
This
yeah.
dingbat, as Archie would say, isn't going to say or do anything meaningful, and that's why it hits so hard when she does.
She was disarming.
Yeah, and she spends 99% of the show disarming you. So
Yeah.
when she leaps, you're doomed. She's
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'll crush you. She'll crush you. And I can't imagine when they were like, okay, now we need to make an episode where Edith dies. It's like,
Oh my God.
wow, good luck. Like the
Yeah.
audience is gonna, we talked about.
Well,
Colonel
she
Blake.
left for a season. She
Yeah.
left at the end, and it turned into Archie's place. And so she was a bit removed by the time they had her pass. But yeah, speaking of deaths, I mean, the death of James, the way it's handled, as someone who went through that, I've lost a couple of family members now, immediate family members. That whole damn, 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 which by the way, I think should be the quote for this episode.
Oh, you're
just
right. That's
because
good.
it kind of keys everyone in. James
That
dies, and Florida is forging ahead, trying to stay busy the way that we do when someone dies. She's putting things away. She's been making dinners for people.
kids are offering help. She's turning down
She
help.
turns down the help. She's in the kitchen. She's finally alone, and she slams down a punch bowl and breaks it and says, "Damn, damn, damn." It all
In
hits her.
Florida's voice. Damn,
Oh, yeah.
damn,
Yeah.
damn. Like
Yeah.
so, oh, so good.
She's got that wonderful voice, and it's real. It is so real. It is probably, and I say probably, it is the most real moment on Good Times ever.
Mhm.
Because that show, very early on, season 1, turned into the JJ Dynamite cavalcade,
Yeah.
which is why first John Amos left after season 3, and then Esther Roll left after season 4, because JJ became the breakout star of the 70s. But all the more reason why that moment is so real. And I love that moment. And it's a little glimpse of what the show could have been if they had cast anyone other than a nightclub comic, Jimmy Walker, as JJ.
Mhm.
And that character never had a catchphrase. And who knows what that show would have been.
Yeah. And we were singing Jimmy's praises just a minute ago.
Oh, no, I
When
think it was everything
yeah,
it should have been, you know?
yeah. It's not incumbent upon JJ to say, can we, let's take me down on this script, or let's turn down my volume.
No.
Like he is of course going to roll with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the show, we lost the realer Good Times. I mean, they managed to get a lot done.
Yeah.
And there's also the Willona and Penny stuff.
Was a
I
little too
think had a
little too late, but it
yeah,
had moments.
yeah, and it was a fairly long arc.
But
Yeah.
those first 3 seasons of Good
Mhm.
Times are great. All the
Yeah,
James seasons
you
and
could
that
call them the heavy seasons,
the heavy
because it
seasons.
is heavy. That's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Well,
heavy stuff in there.
the full family seasons, we'll call it, you know. And Esther
Mm,
Roll, people forget that was Esther Roll's show. She's the one that got the spinoff, and she fought for having a husband character. They just wanted her to be like a single mom, like Julia from the
yeah.
60s. Like, so she fought for that character. And so she and John Amos were really contentious and wanted more, you know, serious storylines and stuff. But
Mm,
people forget too that, you know, Norman Lear even helped Mike Evans develop Good Times after letting him out of his contract as Lionel Jefferson. Because Mike Evans played Lionel Jefferson originally on All in the Family. He continued the role on the Jeffersons. And then he was like, I'm bored of this. I want to do more. I whatever. Norman Lear lets him out of his contract and then
mm,
helps him to develop a show. And that becomes Good Times. The character of Michael Evans on that show is based on him,
mhm.
or at least in tribute to him. So it's hard to make a case against Norman Lear and all the wonderful things he did.
The heart is in the right place. And I gotta
Yeah.
say, Michael Evans, like watching that show growing up, I idolized the smartness of Michael Evans.
Oh,
To
he
have
was
the
a great
youngest,
character. He made
yeah,
being well read cool.
yeah, and that was a pretty cool thing.
I mean, Norman Lear did what Norman Lear does. He built a successful sitcom, and it was that. But already the seeds of its own destruction were sown from the beginning. But let's not talk about that. I can't help but getting real about the shows. One show that we practically forgot about was One Day at a Time, which ran from 1975 to 1984. And it was all about a divorced woman,
That
Bonnie
I remember.
Franklin,
Oh yeah, Bonnie and
raising
her daughters.
two daughters, one a teenager, Mackenzie Phillips, and one an adolescent,
Valerie Van Halen.
Valerie Bertinelli, who didn't get
Yeah.
Van Halen yet. You're a big Van Halen fan. I'm a big Bertinelli fan. I feel like it's a refrain in this episode, but she was yet another crush for me. I loved her on One Day at a Time, and then me and my older sisters would always watch her in every TV movie. For a while, she was the TV movie
She
actress
was,
for
yeah,
like
she was very
5 years.
she was not without my baby lady.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, big time, yeah. I think that she's had a terrific run as a star. What a huge sex symbol she was in sort of
Mhm.
a adolescent way, and her marriage to Eddie Van Halen, through all of that, I think Valerie Bertinelli remained fairly grounded.
And she managed to reinvent herself a number of times. Hot in Cleveland, she starred with Betty White. She's been around. She's the flip side of the Mackenzie Phillips coin. She had a very troubled life. It just goes to show you how perfect that show was. They mirrored their personalities. It dealt with a lot of real stuff, you know? One of the things in watching One Day at a Time over again at the age I am now, I hadn't watched that show since I was a little kid. It ran from 75 to 84, I think. My memory was that Schneider was this lovable but toothless character who is constantly making rather tame innuendos towards Mrs. Romano, and who was just sort of like always around, and she just didn't see him as a love interest because he was kind of dopey. I watch it now, and he is just full on sexual predator practically.
Oh, well, you know what? That is interesting. That is it may be a really good case study. What you saw, how it entered you, how it solidified in you, and what it actually was that you cannot see without your 2023 eyes.
Right. Well, like I told you, I was shocked to see that in the pilot episode, Schneider is referring to his wife. And I'm like, whoa, he was married?
Yeah,
because he was constantly hitting on her.
That would have stopped me in my, and also I kind of picture him, didn't he have two outfits? Didn't he have, I'm fixing your sink outfit and I'm going out on the town outfit? Those are his two outfits.
Yeah. Well, he had his everyday outfit, which was somewhat like Ed Norton on The Honeymooners. It was t-shirt, vest, his cigarette pack rolled up in his t-shirt sleeve, a tool belt, and omnipresent key ring that had like
the keys
50 keys on it. And they were on a cable, a Zippo he could like pull out.
Which he would use to break into apartments.
Yeah, he had a pass key. Creep. Total creep.
He was a total creep.
And, I don't know why I found him so endearing.
Now you're telling me that he was like not just a creeper, but also like openly misogynist.
Oh, and he referred to other ladies. He's like, the other ladies in the building don't call me super for nothing. You know, he was like, he was right out in your face with it. So I was shocked. I thought it was this unrequited love that was kind of sweet. But that speaks more to the age I was as a kid, because I was like, he's always coming on to her, so therefore he must be a single guy. And she's single. I don't know why they don't get together. Like, it was crazy.
I always felt Anne should be with that guy, David, who would show up with a briefcase once in a while.
Yes. Richard Mazer.
He had like a sort of like
shaggy
marshmallow
dog
voice. Yeah, shaggy dog, marshmallow look and voice.
Yeah.
He's like, if you want to, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
He's from our beloved movie, The Thing. He takes care of the dogs.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he has a beard in that, but in this, he's clean shaven.
I never put that together. Oh, my God.
They made him a thing in this, too. He was like, he's in the opening credits of the pilot, and he's got a hefty role in it. His character, just to show you how much people have, I want to say, evolved physically over the years, his character in that, which I think looks older than I am now, is 27. Not only is he 27, it's a plot point. He's 27, and Mrs. Romano's character is 37 or something. And so she doesn't take him too seriously because of the age difference. But I'm looking at him and I'm like, that was 27 in 1975.
Right.
Crazy.
Oh my God. That's even crazier than Carol O'Connor was 46. That's even crazier.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, unbearable. But anyway, I think One Day at a Time was an underrated show. And Norman Lear developed the show and was executive producer on it. So it's yet another feather in his cap. Well, let's say this. Out of all the themes, what is your favorite TV show theme?
Theme song?
Yeah. I'm sorry, theme song.
I thought about it. The Sanford and Son song is one of the greatest instrumentals. It's the only one that we put up to that could match Barney Miller, if not beat it.
Quincy Jones, you got no complaints.
Quincy Jones, you got no complaints. And then I thought, well, Maude. And then I was like, oh, wait, Maude. Yeah. Maude is a major tune. Like
sung by Donny Hathaway. who had one of the most beautiful voices. But I'll
Oh,
say this: the first time I heard the theme to Maude, I was like, "What the hell is this?"
that's
It's such a weird
it's like
theme.
remember those comedians who used to sit at a piano and do political satire
Yeah,
songs,
yeah,
you
for
know?
sure. Yeah,
It's like that. It's like a
Mark
history
Russell.
lesson. Yeah, yeah. It's like a Mark Russell bit. Lady Godiva was
Was
a
a freedom
freedom fighter.
rider.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah, it was so. But I love
but it was
Donny
like,
Hathaway. Come
but it,
on.
yeah, and I forgot, what's that Donny Hathaway hit? That's I feel like we should
Well,
say.
this Christmas we're going to hear this Christmas.
Oh
That
right,
we're going to hear that.
but there's one that's in my head.
The Ghetto.
No, there's you know what? I mean, it might be a lesser known one. It'll come to me as soon as we hit stop on the record button.
I came up with the Donny Hathaway song I think you're thinking of. It's a duet he did with Roberta Flack, Where is the Love?
That's it. Yes, yes,
Which
yes.
is gorgeous, just
Uh,
lovely.
yeah. Yeah, I'm making a long answer out of a short answer. They're all great
Yeah.
songs. So Sanford and Son, great instrumental. Maude, weird but really good. Good times. Not getting hassled, not getting hustled, keeping your head above water and making a wave when you
When you
can.
can. Oh,
That's
so good.
incredible. And then like later in the show, like that song, and then the painting they would pan
Oh, I love that
like,
painting.
yeah, that
Yeah.
painting and that song, as a child, I was like, these are beyond iconic. These are like,
There's like a Marvin Gaye album that uses that painting. But yeah, they're
so,
all good
so
themes.
right, Boy the Way Glenn Miller played songs that made the
Oh,
hit
and
parade.
I'll do you one better. I love the closing theme, Remembering You from All in the Family. It's so good. Um,
Yeah, Carol O'Connor wrote lyrics for that.
yeah,
I'm not a fan,
not a fan
but
either. But that's just such a beautiful. I use that music when I put up my rest in peace Norman Lear picture on Instagram. And if you're not following on Instagram, at Pop Culture Graveyard, and Dave is at Dave himself. Yeah. So Donny Hathaway for best theme song performance, Remembering You for most nostalgic, the opening theme to Sanford and Son for
best
funkiest,
instrumental,
best
funkiest, sure,
instrumental,
right?
or funkiest, All in the Family for just best use of characters. The Jeffersons and Good Times are just
Moving on up. I mean,
oh,
come on.
it's unreal. And you know who sings Moving On Up?
I can't. Go ahead.
Willona from Good Times.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's
How
amazing.
great. Talk about the right kind of incestuous.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Ah,
Jeanette Dubois, I believe is her name. I love all of these people.
yeah, they're great people. It's funny. I kind of mentioned it a little earlier, but I love thinking about how each person says Florida's James and Edith has her Archie
Yeah. Yeah.
and Louise has her George because she's
Ah,
got the gruff one. She's like
gravelly.
George.
Yeah.
And I guess Sanford would Fred Sanford would have to be dummy. I didn't do Mods. Mods is Walter. That's kind of a disappointed Walter.
Hmm. Somebody should cut
That
all those inflections of those into a song.
yeah, they're so good.
We got to wrap up. This is ridiculously long as
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
but we'd be remiss if we did not mention Mr. Davis. Do you take cream and sugar in your rye? I love a reach where like they somehow make it okay to get a celebrity in the house, but Archie moonlighting as a cab driver, and
Sammy
so
he is
and
hard on Archie.
he is hard in the right way on Archie.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. He gives
fantastic.
Archie what he deserves. He really does.
And I love that Archie had a black guy and a Jewish guy in his house at the same time, Sammy Davis Jr.
Right. Doesn't Sammy kiss Archie on the lips?
on the cheek.
On the cheek. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
He
still.
he's like, take this picture, and they're about to take the picture, and then he kisses him, and the picture is taken. And
Yeah, yeah.
Archie's face, Carol O'Connor sells it. Every hit show in the 70s the star of that show tried to or successfully wrested control of the show from the creators. Alan Alda did it on MASH.
Mhm.
Carol O'Connor did it on All in the Family. Peter Falk did it on My Beloved Columbo. But you can't do it unless you're the breakout star of that show. That's where the power comes from. And so that is why I feel Esther Roll wasn't successful. Like, look at Welcome Back, Kotter. More than any other show that I have in my collection, Welcome Back, Kotter was a catchphrase machine. They had a
My
million.
dad still says, "Up your nose with a rubber
Yeah,
hose."
I was going to say, up your nose with a rubber hose was the equivalent. It was the only catchphrase from that show that was as big as dynamite.
Mhm.
But like when you get one of those, like Happy Days with the A,
Yeah.
like catchphrases were the thing in the 70s. And so for anyone to think that the writers of Good Times, let alone the creators, were going to suppress JJ's character once dynamite took over the planet, they're crazy.
Yeah, it's like hitting a, a vein of gold in a
Yeah.
gold mine and then shutting down that tunnel. You're
Yeah,
not gonna
close it
shut
up.
down that tunnel. Yeah. Didn't Grady have
Oh,
like a great googly moogly or something like or goobly goo or something? It was
oh, he
Grady had a
he
weird
could
one.
say anything. I loved his voice because it was like, and I haven't even attempted this in years. Oh, Fred. Like there was this
Yeah,
like
that's it. Yeah.
whispery
Yeah.
high quality to it. And I just loved Grady. Grady was a genius addition because he spelled Red Fox when Red Fox was either sick or playing Vegas or something. And then
Mhm.
he just took over the show when Red
Yeah, he
Fox
did.
was gone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he was like running the Sanford Arms. They turned the junkyard into a into a hotel. But
It was Sanford Arms, yeah.
yeah,
But Grady's voice was the perfect voice for what Grady was doing. He was like Fred's Jiminy Cricket. He
yeah,
was like he was somewhat of a conscience.
yeah.
Yeah, it was Grady was terrific.
Grady was great. I tell you something, I really wish that Esther Roll and John Amos tried to find a way to peacefully coexist with the culture of the show as written, because they denied themselves and they denied us all. You know, I don't want to say anything against the stars of Good Times, but I think it was kind of unfair for Esther Roll and John Amos to assail Norman Lear for not carrying the football all the way into the end zone when it's amazing he even got these shows into the game in the first place. You know, change
Mhm. Yeah.
happens at a painfully slow pace, as we all learn the hard way. And I think Norman was fighting the good fight. Also, he had to fight the networks. I don't think the actors knew what he was up against. So it must have been strange for Norman to go into a meeting with executives and they're all calling him a radical. And then he gets on the
Mhm. Yeah.
set and the actors are
And he's
calling
a
him a
Uncle Tom,
coward.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Uncle Tomming it. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's not his fault. He was the only game in town.
It's a great way to look at it. He was a radical in that boardroom, and he was on the other side when he was on set. So many articles written about him, but one of them had a title along the lines of Norman Lear, who wrote funny shows about important topics. And I was like, "No, that's well said." I think that Norman Lear, he had a firm grasp on what he could get away with from the networks. He had a firm grasp on what he wanted to say. He had a firm grasp on the American viewer and how slowly he would have to feed it to them and how much
Mm.
comedy he would have to wrap around it.
You know, a show is no different than a rock and roll band.
Yeah, I
You
was gonna
know, it's
say.
chemistry, it's a
Mhm.
delicate balance, or a marriage. It's a marriage with a bunch of people. You can't have anyone kind of messing with that delicate balance. There can be stars on the show, but then the other
Mhm.
people have to seek their level. I say all of this to say that it's shocking when a show becomes a success. And therefore, it's even more shocking when someone like Norman Lear, a producer, and his partner, Bud Yorkin, to a lesser degree, have a stable of successful shows. That's crazy how
Yeah, yeah,
successful and talented Norman Lear was.
yeah. If you had asked me 20 years ago about those shows, and I might have said like, it's just Norman Lear is just a white dude who got ensconced in a position where he could push these shows out, and not just lucky, but also like you get in that spot now you're this launching pad and everybody's going to watch what you make. Everybody's going to be waiting to see how good it is. But we see, having watched them over and over and having talked about them, and they've been picked apart by everyone. It's just a guy who had a knack. He could see, he could look at the characters and know. He could look at the actors. This needs to be a show. You
Right.
need to be a show. It's impressive.
So in closing, rest in peace, Norman Lear. Thank you for all of the wonderful shows. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for helping us grow up. We talked about MASH and Barney Miller as having a hand in us being the people we are today. Norman
Thanks
Lear.
for all the dads.
Yeah. Norman
Hey,
Lear
Norman,
is the
thanks for all the
granddad.
dads. Yeah. Thanks for all the moms. Thanks for Florida. Thanks for Maude. This guy is the Carl Sagan of sitcoms. He like dedicated his life to influence human beings in a positive fashion. And he did it with laughter. And he did it for what, 101 years? Very impressive career. Very impressive, man. What a legacy.
I hope that all of you enjoyed this Norman Lear love fest as much as Dave and I enjoyed bringing it to you. And I'm going to go watch a little more Maude.
I'm going to go watch the episode of Maude called The Analyst.
Oh, good. Please do.
Yes.
And you can chase it with the Hawkeye episode of MASH. They're good.
The Hawkeye
good
concussion
fellas.
episode?
The concussion episode. All right, pal. Good work. I will see you
Well done,
later.
my friend. Bye-bye.
All right.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.